Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm getting used to this because we just turned off some music just in case YouTube picked it up. Don't want more trouble from YouTube. Boy, they didn't like that Wayne video at all. So if you missed it, YouTube gave me my first community strike. Lucky for me, they let me know how nice they are, that they're not going to make it count unless I do it again. If I do it again, 1 week, no live, no videos. So I'm going to be super careful during this part to make sure that we don't get that, because I definitely want to keep bringing this inquiry to all of you. YouTube is a large platform. It does give me big reach. Rumble's growing and it's doing quite well. But I also don't want to miss my audience here and get the message out on YouTube. So I'll do my best. I did appeal it, so maybe they will return the video and change their mind. And it would be great. I think YouTube, you should tell people precisely where the complaint is. Give me a 5-minute window and say it's in this area. Give us a chance to at least understand a little bit more what you consider to be breaking the rules. Good morning, Denise. You are a star first thing in the morning. Welcome to the chat, Denise. Nice to see you. And today's going to be another fun day because we got some good news. Doug Ford, we've been talking about it, subpoenaed by the Canadian Constitution Foundation. And he has to go. But like a politician kind of does, he's going to fight it. He doesn't want to go for whatever reason, but he's going to be very, very unsuccessful. There's no question in my mind that the court will uphold the subpoena, the summons, because why would they quash it? The Prime Minister himself will be there. It's an inquiry for an event in Canada history. There's no doubt in my mind they're going to hold it up, and he's going to have to go. Now, if you guys don't recognize me, that's my bad. I did not put my glasses on this morning. So this is Jason Old, and this is the Jason you know. Hi, good morning. I'm live. Yay. So we got a nice video from the Canadian Constitution Foundation. Of course, Christine is very pleased and happy with the result that the commission is provided a summons. And then she also covers his fight for it. I don't think he'll be successful. He's going to be showing up. So let's get ourselves ready for Doug Ford in the very near future. And also, thank you for taking the time to listen to Christine. And she's got a small little update on day 8, because as we all know, we saw it yesterday. Not too much going on, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of butt covering, and some redefinition of words like violence again. Well, here's Christine. Let's all celebrate together. Doug Ford is now going to be going to the commission. I am very certain the court will not quash it. If Prime Minister Trudeau's got to go, Freeland's got to go, Cabinet's got to go, Ford will be there. Here you go. And I think audio looks good. Great.
Hi there. Thanks for tuning into the Canadian Constitution Foundation's Freedom Update with Premier Ford. And I also wanted to say thank you to everybody who has accepted a copy of our new book that came out on Friday. Thank you so much. We actually had over 800 people download a free electronic copy, which is amazing. And we're actually still giving out free copies. So be sure to get yours at the ccf.ca/freedom through federalism. I'll leave a link up there, and I'll leave a link in the description below. Okay, that's all for this update. Thanks for watching, and let's keep fighting for freedom in Canada.
So exciting. Let's keep fighting for freedom for Canada. I love that line. Oh, I'm just in a good mood today because we got some more good news. So Ford is going to be in the hot seat. And what else happened? Well, we had the Ottawa election last night. Them didn't win. Is Ottawa trying to clean house now? I think they are, because we got some more results to share with you. Check this out. So they got a new mayor. Not they, them. Mark, congratulations, Mark. Welcome to the city of Ottawa. I hope you can handle. And here's his team of counselors. Are we missing a couple? Fleury did not win. McKinney did not win. They're gone. They are gone. I don't know who else didn't make it. Good morning, Prairie. But those were the two that we were certainly keeping an eye on. So is Ottawa being very clear Did Ottawa just make their decision last night on which side they support? Did they go with the councillors that were supporting the protesters or the city? Well, it looks like protesters. They got rid of the two largest vocal opponents, the two councillors of the region where this was happening. They've been replaced. We now have some new people there. So I'm very keen and interested to see how that will change anything. I don't know if the Inquirer itself will change, but we can definitely expect Ottawa to change. So I'm very pleased about that news. It's been a good morning. Doug Ford and Ottawa has now voted out what I would call the agitators to the desire to aggressively handle peaceful protesters. So anybody that was on that side of that, I am pleased to see Ottawa said, no, thank you. You didn't represent us, and you're no longer representing us. So yeah, you got it. The silent majority spoke, Joe, for sure. And we're very pleased with that, aren't we? But I do want to kind of say something here, Joe. I don't think we're so silent. I think we're now the whispering majority because we're starting to speak up. You're hearing more and more. You're getting people who are more comfortable with coming out on their position and where they stand. So I think we can rename them the whispering majority right now. And soon they're going to be loud, the loud majority, for sure, with their vote. Joe, and this gives me confidence. I believe in our electoral system. I even had somebody on YouTube, on a YouTube comment on another video I did, basically call me naive for thinking that the election system will be good and I'm running for it. So maybe I'm a bit of a fool, I think is where they were going with that. I believe in the electoral system, and anybody who says don't or don't bother, they can surrender all they want. I'm not interested in surrendering. And I'm surrounded by people who want to fight. Very few people are going belly up. So I'm going to keep the fight going. I'm not discouraged by anybody who thinks we don't have a good electoral system. I'm going to go for it, and I'll find out. Research on who the person is. Yeah, sure, but right now I'm just happy that they're replaced. I don't know if it's another woke or anything like that, but I know that the wards that were represented by those councillors said no thank you. And you can only imagine it's based on the representation that they just had, because Fleury was a two-term. I believe he was a two-term councillor. So he was re-electable. He had that happen once. So the people have spoken. What I would like to do is maybe on, while the video's playing, is go find the results to see how close it was and that kind of stuff. But yeah, Joe, big thumbs up. Very pleased as well. Do you guys think Ford will be successful at quashing the summons? I really don't think so. I don't even know how a court would justify that. And what did Christine have to say? Well, Ford wasn't as cooperative as what the city wanted and what some other people may have thought. But I don't see that as a negative. Ford is a conservative, right? He's for the Conservative Party. And maybe he just simply didn't agree with what was going on there and didn't see it as unlawful and didn't see it as requiring provincial resources. Nor was he required in order for the OPS and the OPP to work together. They're working together all along. So I'll be very curious as to why he chose to not be as involved in the events as they were happening. I think it's because he knows it was a perfectly legal protest. And then we'll also find out hopefully why he was trying to quash this. Maybe he believes he's got nothing to add, or maybe he doesn't want the hot seat being a conservative, on the stand with a Liberal government that's clearly not going to be for the Liberal government, and he doesn't want that lashback by people in Ontario. Ford, toughen up. We had protesters, women, children, good people in Canada that did not deserve to see or be part of what happened there. It was terrible. The threats on people I don't want to see that kind of thing happen again. Threatening children, threatening bank accounts, threatening property, threatening jobs, threatening licenses, threatening insurance. We should be embarrassed, ashamed, and never do that again. Yeah. And also we have the Jones, Attorney General or Solicitor General, Jones. So why that will be important is she came up with some statements that said, hey, we didn't have laws to cover it. We're going to make new laws, which kind of came out after the protest was done. So let's question her about what she's talking about there, because they absolutely had laws. And second, why didn't they exhaust all options, even on the provincial level? I guarantee you the province can go and look for injunctions and stuff like that. How do I know that? Because that's exactly what Ford is doing right now. He's trying to get a court injunction to quash his summon. So yeah, they know how to use the court. They have it available to them. They should have been using it. And I really, I'm going to keep standing on this position that the main reason why they couldn't find laws to deal with the situation is because there was no illegal situation happening. It's really as simple as that. If somebody's walking down the sidewalk legally and you just don't like the cut of their jib, suck it up. There's nothing you can do. Deciding to now call it more than it is, that person's a criminal and that person has intent to be violent, so let's lock them up because I don't want them around. That kind of mindset, let's be very careful with people like that. Let's be empathetic to them because they're not thinking straight, and let's hope one day that they don't find out what it's like to be on the other side of someone like them, because it's not nice. But in any case, we're celebrating a bit this morning. We've got Ford going, we've got McKinney gone, we got Fleury gone. I think Ottawa might be reshuffling the power, and the people of Ottawa, including the businesses, have spoken. I'm not sure if our friend Paul Champ is going to be excited about that, if he's going to mention that, because no matter what, from this point on, I do not think he represents the voice of both those wards of downtown Ottawa, because both of them spoke yesterday and said the representatives are not going to work for us. He's going to, of course, keep going. There's no stopping Paul. He's quite the litigator, and by the way, he's doing a good job. But yeah, he shouldn't be saying I represent all these people. I don't think that's true. They've spoken. And we also have a new police chief going into Ottawa. So it appears he's from out of BC. We used to work for the RCMP as well, I understand. A little bit more strength in him. I don't know if he's got complaints, if he goes too far. We'll have to look into him, but the decision's been made. They have a new chief, they have a new mayor, they have some new councillors. So it looks like that convoy protest has really started to clean house. Ottawa is replacing people. And I think because of the convoy, you're going to see the same type of thing in basically any election, federal or Ontario going. It's going to be impacted. It's going to be basically a referendum on what our leaders did in February. And right now, the first one was the Ottawa municipal vote, and the referendum came in, and they voted no to riding your horses over peaceful protesters. They said no to shooting canisters at reporters. They said no to not negotiating and sitting down with Canadians to have legal grievances. And they said no to trying to paint a narrative that just simply didn't exist. So I'm pleased with that. I hope there's a bit of a ripple effect. I hope that the OPS officers to come, because there's some more of them to come, and I hope that all witnesses understand that the city of Ottawa did not reject this protest. The residents directly impacted did not reject this protest. You have a small group of people who could have real grievances, could be opportunists, could just be advocates or activists in order to have their voices heard and propel their message forward. In any case, we're not seeing consensus or the city itself agreeing with the narrative that they were taken hostage and that they had no ability to deal with it. I don't think any resident was happy with the testimony they heard from their councillors last week, or especially the week before now. Wow, it's going by quick. Because if I lived there and I was a resident there living downtown, I wouldn't have been pleased with the victimization painting that was happening for me if I was a resident. I wouldn't have liked it at all, and it appears that maybe the people of Ottawa agreed with that too. So I'm excited. I'm having a good day, and hopefully we'll keep the audio going today for you. I'm going to try and be very cautious about that. And sorry, I'm just getting the video link ready. I do have the stream. It's a high quality stream, and things are looking good. Happy Tuesday. And I hope you're all good. Throw some messages in the chat. Go ahead and add a comment to this video if you're watching after the fact. Go ahead and give us your impression of what you see. I love the comments that happen during the video. I will always check them out. I'll respond to them. and happy to see them all. And I also want to thank my regulars here, Denise, Prairie, and that's Joe. Hi, Joe. And I'm sure we're going to see James a little bit later. He likes to get ready for work and put us in his ear. It's really cool to hear from someone like James to send me a message and go, hey, bud, I just Bluetooth you and then I put you on my phone and I have to use my self plan, but it's worth it. Because he wants to hear what's happening to his country. He wants to be part of it, just like everybody that's listening right now. You don't want to be one of the ones left in the dark. And to all of you, we love you. That's exactly what we should be doing. We should be doing our best to reach out in positive ways with stern, firm messaging that we don't agree with some of this stuff. And we will stand up, independent or not, private life or not. A lot of these things can take the back seat when you are witness to your country moving in a direction that you don't recognize as your country, and you certainly don't inspire to want to see continue. I think that's the stage we're at right now. Thoughts on the Peckford ruling? Is this good or bad news? Hit me a link. I haven't seen the Peckford ruling. I know it wasn't going good before. I know that we weren't very happy. So please send me a link. Is it quashed? Is it dismissed? Or is it continuing? Hopefully we have 3 pieces of good news. Apologies for not being on top of that. I'm really, really trying to keep my obligations and my full-time video streaming going. It's a lot of work, as Christine identified a couple times. It's a lot of work, but it's completely worth it. So as a result, though, I am missing some of the news as it's happening. So please go ahead, Prairie, or anyone else, throw a link in there, or just give me a quick summary where we're at with that, and I'll look at it during the break. Okay. All right, so who's coming next? OPS, and it's going to be Russell Lucas. Russell Lucas. Who is he? Well, he's not going to be a low level. I'm pretty sure of that, because he's going to have to be responsible for what's going on here. Let's see if OPS, see if there's much of them online. City of Ottawa Police Service as an inspector. All right, so an inspector for the City of Ottawa. So what's he going to be testifying to? What is he going to be testifying to? Dangerous situation? Is he going to be testifying to? We had intel that let us believe that meme groups like Diagolon is a genuine problem. What's he going to testify to? I'm curious. Because an inspector's job is to collect information and speak to people, and well, they're like an investigator almost. But they're out there in the public, dealing with the public and coordinating strategies. And we're going to find out a lot about Russell today. Sorry, I'm just writing some notes here. Right, Officer Russell. And what did you think about yesterday's cross by Brendan Miller? Definition of violence. Did you see the squirming? There was quite a bit of it. So much so that we got another hot mic moment saying thank you to the commissioner. And did you see me squirming? We all saw you squirming. And only a person who believes they were squirming would ever make a comment like that, especially to a commissioner. So I believe that was his most truthful statement he made the entire time, was the hot mic statement at the very end about squirming in his seat. I believe that to be a very true statement. And there's reason for it. He certainly did not conduct himself in the best way possible during the events. I think his biggest downfall is the lack of using good intelligence and looking at the Hendon reports. Okay, I'm getting some audio, and hopefully you can hear it too. It looks like it's on. And what we'll do is, yeah, it'll just be in a minute or two. So what I'll do is I'm going to pop away. I got a couple things to take care of this morning. I'm going to have it in my ear. So the people in the comments in the chat, I will get back to you and put you on up as I get back. And let me see, we got a couple right now. Oh, get sided with the government on the mootness challenge. Oh no, because it's not moot. It's not moot at all. The filing should be on the event at the moment in time that was filed, and that should be what's decided on. But guys, I don't think this is a terrible news, because this allows for an appeal, which kicks it up another level. He was the best part of the day. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, Denise. Oh, hi, Dwayne. So if you don't know how the court systems work, you usually need an event. You need an issue in or matter, and then you bring it into a lower court, usually superior court. It could be a hearing, it could be administrative, it could be many different things. But if you lose there, your next one is appeal. You go up to appeal. And if you lose there again, you can go up to the Supreme Court.
Order allowed.
All right, well, here he is. So I'll look into the Peckford thing. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for staying with me. Stream troubles. Just checked it again, no go. And not only is it, starting and stopping, it's not even starting now. So I'm getting no chance to get the stream right now. I'll try again, but that could be overload. That could be a whole bunch of things. I also have VPN options for tomorrow if that may be the issue. So I will explore all that for tomorrow to be ready with that. Thank you very much to Maverick and your team, because you guys got a good stream and you got it up. So I really appreciate you letting me piggyback and share it with everybody else. I think the commentary that you have so far, I've watched some of your summaries, is stellar. I have a bit of a different view, but I do want to share mine as well. My goodness, lots and lots and lots and lots of notes. But what I want to first say is it looks like we've been watching the Tour de Ottawa. It's very similar to the Tour de France, but they do a lot of backpedaling. It goes in reverse, because that's all we saw this morning. This is all we're seeing this morning. And Commissioner Rouleau there at the end asked for some clarification on, you said you had an opportunity to make some ground. What happened? And we just heard some verbal diarrhea, a bunch of excuses, and didn't answer the question at all, not even close. So we had to ask the question a second time, exact same question, no difference in the question. And then he started with, again, explaining and not answering the question at all, until he reluctantly had to spit out that actually it was an order from above, which changed the situation. And from that point on, we couldn't go ahead and coordinate. I believe he was impeached a couple times. I believe he was impeached by the Commission Council as well, or at first. They had some great questions. I seriously have like 3 pages of notes here. So I'm going to save some of this for the summary at the end today to make that a little bit longer, because I do have a lot of notes. But I believe he was impeached with page number 14 of a document that was pulled up. It was notes for a meeting on the command table on February 15th, asking, the question was, were you there? And the answer was yes, I was there. And that page 14 showed the attendees. And then page 19, scroll down, there was a comment. Do we have room on Wellington? Because the question that was being asked was whether or not there was room on Wellington for the trucks, alternate places to put the trucks. And his testimony was he didn't know. He didn't know if there was room on Wellington, February 15th. And this is why the Commission Council brought this up. And then he's noted as saying, yes, we can check the camera. And he was humming and not very comfortable anymore, and had to answer, said, yes, if there are notes that say that, then okay, but these are not my notes. Wow. Okay, backpedal, you're in first place, Inspector here, because what kind of answer is that? Well, if the record shows, which is the reason why we keep records, that I said that at that time, well then sure. But why isn't his memory recalling that? And then further down, page 23, the inspector listed off 4 intersections and mentioned that he can check the intersections with the cameras. And the notes were, can you check? And then the question was, there was room. So there was clearly room. You can see with the camera there were room for more trucks. And the last quote from the council was, yes, or from the witness here, inspector was, yes, it would seem logical. So impeached, I think impeached. He said he had no idea if there was room on Wellington. And then through the record, the note-taking on February 15th, not only did he know there was room, he was very clear that after checking 4 intersection cameras, there was plenty of room. So I think that's impeached. And I did mark another impeachment. Rebecca Jones for slowly was great. We'll get to her later. City of Ottawa wasn't bad. Christine Johnson from the Ottawa City a coalition of residents and businesses. First time seeing her, I believe. Nice to meet you, Christine. I'm glad you don't have propaganda stickers on your laptop. That's cool. Government of Canada embarrassed me, so I'll definitely get to that one. Where's the next impeachment? I marked, there's so many notes here. I'll get to it again. But here, let's jump to the Government of Canada, which I found was embarrassing. Really trying to split hairs and redefine and define and use and imply that misinformation, disinformation is super important and key to this particular inquiry. And we found from the witness, the inspector said they use social media and they didn't know what they can trust. So they would try and put the information through the sources to see if you can get an answer to it. They were trying to define misinformation and disinformation quite a few different ways. And I don't even care. I think we all understand clearly what incorrect information is. We can just start calling it that. We don't have to split hairs and go miss this. It came from here. It came from that. It's just incorrect information because they were really referring to rumors, weren't they? They talked about a construction fence being shared around social media as if it was fortifying the Parliament Hill. And whether it was a construction thing or not, we actually heard testimony a little bit later after the Government of Canada that sure enough, PPS, the Parliamentary Protective Services, were actually hiding behind it and using it. So whether it was intended to be fortification or not, it does appear it actually ended up being used as a type of fortification. So, you know, pointing to a social media post about a fence and then saying, hey, that's proof that there's, oh, actually, you got the quotes here. The Government of Canada asked if it was having trouble with determining if it was fact or fiction, and inspector said yes. And then the Government of Canada says there is confusion that the police were supporting protesters, and the inspector said yes, they were taking selfies. And then the government said, is that an example of disinformation? And the inspector said yes. So here's the government trying to say disinformation exists. First, it was a fence being fortification, and it turns out it actually was. And now they're also pointing to another incident where it was protesters were saying, hey, some police are supporting our cause, because they were, and taking selfies. Both of these, the government's pointing to as proof of disinformation, but neither one of them actually are. Turns out, yeah, PPS were standing behind that construction fence and using it as a fortification, and they certainly would have if the crowd decided to come through it in any fashion. And yeah, for sure, police officers were supporting, because we then got testimony from the inspector that said it was personal but not professional. We got that out of the Freedom Convoy. So Bathsheba, oh, I love the name. She asked if there were people in OPS supporting, correct? And the inspector's response to that was personally, but they should not be professionally. So in other words, if they were there in their uniform, they shouldn't do that. But that really wasn't the question. The question was, are they against a protest or not? And many were for it. Many also agreed with it, but they were forced not to show professionally support for it, as the testimony shows. But then the Government of Canada, so stepping back to the Government of Canada's whole point on this, was they pointed to that as false and disinformation and had the witness corroborate and say, yes, that's an example of false and disinformation. But most certainly is not, because the very next testimony from the very next question was, did officers support it? And the answer is yeah. Personally, they did. Professionally, they shouldn't have been. And when you say should not have been, it implies some did. So this is an impeachable witness. He's getting impeached left, right, and center. He's backpedaling. He's avoiding the answers. And we saw more redaction. There's more redaction in the documents coming out of them. And a couple of them around what was important to him, it looked like. Because we saw, looked like what notes, and then his position was redacted for the notes. So I'm not sure what they said. Now we can go ahead and cover some more of the Freedom Convoy, because we got a bit more time here. In addition to getting him to admit that police officers did support the protest, took selfies, and they shouldn't have, I guess. Her very next question was, there was a 5-day drive and you're expecting them to leave in 2 days? And his response to that was, we expected the vast majority to leave. All right, let's give this guy some credit. All right. He said 70, 80, 60, various percentages of how many did leave or they were expecting to leave. All right, let's give him that. But what does majority mean? Majority means not everybody. So that would leave some behind. Whether you consider it a minority of the main group or the first group or the blah, 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 whatever you want to call it. You didn't say everyone was expected to leave. You said a majority, which means you absolutely, even at that point, Freudian slip or not, you did expect some. One or more is not all. So as we did see, many stayed. And I believe his testimony later was about 2/3 left initially. I got a note around that one. So, yeah, you absolutely knew they were going to be there for longer than 2 days. Nobody drives cross country for 5 days unless they get what they're looking for, which would have been a meeting with the prime minister and a clear understanding of why specifically truckers were targeted for the mandates while other transporters of commercial goods were not, like boats, planes, and trains. None of them had the mandates. Some of their employers did, but none of them were a federal mandate. Then she's just nailing it. She's going straight for it. You switch to tactical operations. Yes. And this is what we had later with the commissioner on his question was, why? But then we were looking for the name of an officer on for the 14th deal. Who was the officer who from OPS who was responsible for the decision on the 14th deal? And he starts spilling the beans, naming names, mentioning so many I couldn't keep up with the typing. But one of the comments that came out of that group of people was they said they arrested protesters they referred to protesters as detainees. There we go again. We're looking and hearing about war. That's their mindset. They were thinking about war. Hello, Wayne. Just let me go ahead and you go ahead, Wayne. If you want to cut in, we're chatting a bit here.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, they're using a lot of war lingo. So detainees. These are Canadians, and many of them were cold. So she highlighted rightfully that it was minus 24 degrees with a windshield, and it was cold. And the witness corroborated that. He said it was cold. Officers were offering personal hand warmers as people were being picked up and stuff. So again, sometimes you don't think about what the answer is and you're just spitting stuff out. That was a true statement. He was kind of bragging about the OPS and how they were being very civil with the detainees and providing them some hand warmers while they were freezing. And then we got into, do you agree that hypothermia, frostbite, and we listed off a whole bunch of other things, is a safety risk for people? And of course, the witness had to agree there is a risk. Yep. Sure, of course. You're also talking about getting rid of their fires and stuff like that. Wayne, I just got a couple more notes and then we'll move on to you. Did you not see any of the plans? So she then started talking about whether or not he had access to the plans, and he started to backpedal again. His focus was on getting our officers through the next 3 hours. So, really thinking about just his job, compartmentalized, not caring about what the rest of the plans are and what other people are doing. I think that was embarrassing. I think his career should take some sort of re-education. He's got the wrong mindset for that job. Sure, you're supposed to be dedicated and focused to your job, but what you shouldn't do is ignore how other pieces of the team's working, especially if you're allowing them to proceed in a way that's illegal, and you're going to later find yourself in an inquiry explaining it. Have another note here. The police drove protesters outside the city without phone or shelter. He answered he didn't know, like as if he didn't know about that. We've actually had plenty of testimony. Well, a little bit of testimony so far. We're going to get a lot more coming out next week, I'm sure. But we've had lots of video and lots of witnesses to this. They would pick up people, drive them out of the city, take away their phone, drop them off wherever they are, and then just say, go, don't come back type of thing. Young people, young adults, teenagers, just basically anybody. And why are they doing that with no charges? Because there are no charges. This is legal. This is just a way of transporting the ones that are in the front that are resisting. And then when asked again, right, so she had to kind of repeat it and asked again, and pointed to a statement that he made where he replied, "Well, they'll find a way to leave," implying after we drop them off, they'll find a way to go from that location to something else, and then maybe not come back to the protest itself. So he was very aware that they were doing that, and that's sad. He was a flip flopper. He did tell the truth in certain places. He named names, and he definitely painted a really bad picture. There's a lot more from this first half. I got a whole bunch of notes. I do want to let you know we have guests lined up for this break as well. I'm going to bring back Joe and Chris, and we're going to get into a lot more conversation about Alberta, sovereignty, BC, and where we're headed with that. And I'm sure Joe and Chris will have a lot more to talk about as well. So stick around for the lunch break on that. And Wayne, welcome back, my friend. You are really loved on Twitter. You are really loved by quite a few people. Your video was taken down. Our video was taken down. Still up on Rumble, and now there's a lot of people sharing it, pushing it, and you're a good dude, and you do have a lot of support. What do you think?
It's all thanks to you as well, though, because it's your platform and you're willing to take the risk to talk to people. So, unfortunately, those words do trigger off the algorithms. So,
yeah, no, there was only 18 viewers, 5 likes at the time it got taken down. YouTube does not tell you anything about why they did it. They just said you violated medical misinformation and COVID vaccine. That's all they told me. Yeah, they didn't tell me where or anything like that. So even if we wanted to censor you on YouTube, we can't, because we don't know what part it was that was a problem for them.
Could be any of it, couldn't it? It could even just be the name, because you're banned then on Twitter. So you then somewhere might be tagged somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think what's going on is either AI that saw the vaccine injury in the name and just kind of tagged it, or there's some people with a special dislike button, and they just hit it, and immediately you're off, and then you can go to appeal.
Yeah, keyboard warriors.
Yeah. But no, I did an appeal. So someone, they're going to have to watch 2.5 hours to see if we crossed the line. I believe they're going to have to watch the entire thing, because they're not going to find anything along the way. And we're probably going to get a like and put back up from them, because it was a good video. It was fair. And
I mean, that's what so many people are saying, because it was such a broad range of topics. But it was just natural conversation that just seemed to come up. So
yeah, and your personal experience is not subject to medical misinformation, because it is your personal experience. If you were saying things like, "I believe all people should do blah," and I'm going to be very careful how I speak here, because the AI might listen to that and misinterpret it, then yeah, I could understand why, because you're directing or informing people about something. That I could see would. Yeah, and I could see how someone could challenge that kind of statement as mis or disinformation, as we have had defined during this inquiry. But you didn't do that. You only talked about what you went through, your experience, firsthand witness.
I can't remember fully, but I might have said, even as a disclaimer,
careful.
I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you to do one thing one way or the other, but just please be better informed.
Yeah, no, and I think even at one point, something along the lines of we respected the fact that there's certainly a group of people who would benefit from the vaccine, and the older group, the people pre-existing anything. There's certainly a group that some of the data has been showing does benefit, and that's about as far as we went with that, because we don't want it taken down. But yeah, we got bit by the censorship bug. I'm appealing it. Someone's got to watch it now, and I suspect we'll get it back up. But in the meantime, hello Rumble. Not a problem there. Yeah, no, they marked it as monetized. I don't make any money. It's very, very low traffic.
No, at the end of the day, it's a bonus. It's a bonus to the whole thing, isn't it? Because you're getting your stories out there, whether it's myself or the other people that you talk to.
Yeah, and I have a huge concern though, because Rumble has definitely become the alternate platform, which a lot of people are using, which is great. However, it's a Canadian company. It's based out of Toronto, and it will be subject to Bill C-11. I assure you that Rumble is one of the drivers behind the Bill C-11, because they are absolutely staying open, free, and they're not violating any laws. Because if they were, that's a different question. But they're not following censorship and control or narrative. So they're a problem. Sorry, I see we may have video. Nope, sorry, not yet. It's Maverick doing a great job doing some clips and reviewing some stuff. It looks like.
Oh, so you had to switch feeds or something? Because I just
Yeah, no, hold on. Let me check because I want to make sure I'm right about that.
It's your direct connection to the creator, and you hold it in the spirit of the truth.
Oh, no, it's a new
Aside
witness.
from
Here we
that.
go.
Thank you.
Cool. Hey, Chris is here too. Hey, Chris. Hey, Wayne. Welcome, guys. Give me a second. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle that video because it's now working the live stream for me. Welcome to everybody that stuck around. My stream dropped. My source dropped. We had to jump around, get a backup going. But that's why we're prepared for that. And thank you, Maverick. You were strong and stable. And now I'm going to go back to the original one. Hey, Chris. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I saw your tweets, and there's a lot of love on Twitter for you. That's wonderful. And of course, you're
Is it love though?
Well, they're going to be here watching Rumble and YouTube. We gave them the links, and a lot of people, a lot of people are going to check it out. I'm expecting just one more. So Joe might be joining us again, but we're going to keep this one a little bit short, or not short, but a smaller group, so we can each have a bit more chance to talk about what we're here to spread the messages of. Wayne, you're chatty and you missed the first half. There was a lot of excitement because that was an impeached witness multiple times. I had to let people know that we were watching the Tour de Ottawa, which is like the Tour de France, just backpedaling, because that's all they were doing the entire time, the first one. So OPS is sticking to the drum beats of we had no resources, we had no plan, we didn't know what was coming, and it's everybody else's fault. But the OPP is a complete juxtaposition on them, completely different. I take notes as I'm going along when I hear things that I need to address that are like wrong or lies or misinformation or whatnot. I have 4 pages from the first witness and none so far from the OPP. I believe his testimony so far. Chris, yeah, I love Chris's opinion too there, James. James is one of our regular. I think we're Bluetoothing into your ear while you work. The phone is got a big phone bill this month because he's 3G in it or 5G in it or whatever. But yeah, James, Chris is an amazing person. Lucky to have met him. And I see Joe is giving us a smile. So Joe, if you have that link, come on in, and we'll get you going. All right, so Chris, I want to start with you because we got just onto the iceberg, just the tip of the iceberg with you yesterday around the opposition, First Nations, protesting, how this is all changing now. And if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind, hearing a little bit more about what you think could be coming down if we do have a central command, a national police force, and some sort of intelligence agency now. Because now I'm hearing nothing but bad intelligence and good intelligence, and they don't know the difference. So are we going to be seeing that? And what do you think?
Well, I think it's interesting because it's one of those scenarios where I think a lot of people are looking at it from okay, we went along with it at the time, and you go back over it, and same thing with a lot of the stuff we see with the COVID restrictions and stuff. We don't really see a lot of scientific basis with here. We don't see a lot of legal. I think that it would probably spook a lot of people. Like it's one of those things where how well informed will the public be that this is happening? And I won't believe any public, like the polling and stuff is just so, I don't trust a lot of the data we see with online polling and other these internal polls that get released as far as the sample size. But when you look at, it'll really come down to how vocal the conservatives are, I think, with regards to, okay, this is what they're doing, these are the impacts, right? As opposed to just, I don't like standing up and vilifying. You got to be very clear with the public and let them know this is what the impacts are going to be. I don't want to play the word games or the hashtags or anything like that. Specifically with First Nations, it's a lot more complicated. Like I said yesterday, you have the 650 plus in the country, all of them autonomous and have their own, they're union, right? Some of them are with tribal councils, some of them are not. So the landscape, when you're looking at that, those that are already at a certain level of economic development, when you look at the employment numbers and you look at just the functionality of the nation as itself, or the reserve, the band, tribal, it's the ones that are trying to come up, I think, would be the ones that will be the most impacted. I think that it creates a lack of certainty, and that's when it comes to business. It's you need certainty to be able to get investment, to make sure you're going to be able to see the projects start to finish, and that's what a lot of the problems happen. It is trying to get it over the finish line. And with First Nations, if you have this kind of vehicle, which I would imagine would have FinTrack and other things, it's a matter of who the leader is and which ideology of the time is running, right? Like right now, if a First Nation wanted to protest a pipeline, we saw the blockades, very different approach, right? And there needs to be that. And what I think the biggest risk here is the omission of dialogue that would occur. So I would say, if this is what's going to happen, where you're going to have a centralized command, it'll be upon the local Indigenous communities and Indigenous groups to make sure that they have a united front towards liaison, communications, dialogue, standard operating procedures. Not to say that the government will follow them, but to know that at any moment, it's a tool that I don't like government having, because a lot of the times when I was dealing with it, it's a matter of delaying. Like if I was ever working, a couple of projects I worked on in the past was just helping get permits and stuff for some resource development. But it was between there was an investor and then there was a First Nation, and coming together is trying to make sure everybody was happy. And in those situations, it went smoothly because there was enough dialogue happening throughout. Everything was on the table. All the families from the nation was included. There was enough roundabout dialogue. But my fear is you get to this point where all the government has to do is sit back and let timelines pass. From what I've seen so far with this inquiry, they wanted to use the Emergencies Act. They've come up with ridiculous reasons as to why they think it should be justified. Yesterday we heard it was not really violence, but it was feelings. So what does that mean? What does the speed of science mean? Like, all of this language is being distorted. And in these scenarios where if you give government centralized control over 650, some would argue they already have centralized control through the Indian Act. I get that. But with regards to their self-determination and their ability to make decisions and make, decisions where the government's not going to interfere, or if you have, again, like on one First Nation, you could be evenly split. You've got 6 families, you got 3 that are against natural resource development, you got 3 that are for it. So you always hit those stalemates. And I don't like how the louder you get, it seems to be the response is more authoritarian each time. So if I'm using this as a metric of standard as far as if there is a protest, Emergencies Act type powers give that kind of centralized control, taking it away from all of the local players, I can't see how that turns out well for anybody. Maybe for the establishment or the hierarchy of government top down, but not for those who are supposed to be serving.
Yeah, and with this protest, maybe it'll become the template or the standard of what, if it reaches this level, we trigger additional actions. And what we didn't see in this protest was destruction of property, real threats of personal violence, holding of weapons, holding of signs that are explicit on violence, blocking roads completely, digging up, blocking train tracks, all the types of things that we see in other protests across Canada that do happen. So clearly, if this is going to be the standard where you're just disrupting something, whether it's a business or government or something, if that's now the new standard because there's an economic tie or whatnot, if that's a new standard, basically every protest I've seen in the last 30 years or so will now trigger this new reaction. So we're already seeing the financial system have some changes. Freeland brought in some of the changes. Some of them are more permanent. And when it comes to the recommendations from this inquiry, that's still yet to come. We're not even sure what else is going to be put on top of that. The recommendation might come along that says, that financial tool worked really great. I've determined that because that threat of asset seizure was there, that was enough to compel everybody. Maybe he comes out and says, that's a valid tool next time. And then they actually give themselves that one. So we got to pay close attention to what they're using as tools, the past tools, the new tools, and then the tools coming up. And when they do things with like financial, Let me ask you, and sorry for the ignorance on this. Is there any co-op or banks for First Nations outside of the national banks? Like, do they have any credit unions or co-ops that they own?
I know that they're working towards it. Okay, so I'll be honest. It's been 2 or 3 years since I've had my ear to the ground involved in. It was probably about 8 months before the pandemic hit was one of my last interactions. But over the previous 5 years or so, it has been. It's well. Put it this way: Indigenous communities are well aware that they need to have more sovereignty over their and the control over
Yeah.
their finances. So they're very, very aware. I've been in meetings and stuff where a centralized bank was being discussed out of the U.S. And so I know let me get back to you on that question. I will go and see where things are at now, but I know that they're very aware, and especially after the with the bank seizures and the Rogers, act, so I'm curious to see where some of those groups are at. I don't want to name them here. I'll just go and take a
No,
look
for sure.
where they're at
And
then
yeah,
get back to you.
yeah, and it's been a long time since I looked at any of their statutes around sovereignty, but I do believe they have the ability to, if they wanted to. I don't think there's any wording in there that would stop them. And it would be credit union, because I don't think they would want a charter. But hey, if we had a 6th chartered national bank that was not tied to the main 5, I think it'd be a benefit to Canada, and I think they would actually get a lot of business if someone
They would.
did that. Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I think that could be coming for sure. We already have some of them. Now, if we define what a protest means, so hey, if you block a railroad that happens to be going towards Montreal, the economic impact is this million per day. That exceeds the limit of $0 per day of economic impact. Therefore, we now have to shut you down with force. Um, so I hope we don't head that way. And Wayne, you came in at the I think you just missed the first witness completely, but you did
Yeah.
come in and catch the second one. And at first you weren't sure, how it was for us, and whether or not they were being truthful and stuff. But now you've seen a little bit of more of the OPP. This is a First Nations representative. He works on the protest. He's uh, well accomplished. You can tell by his demeanor. He's comfortable. He's telling the truth. And these are one of the professionals that could have negotiated a peaceful resolution. And he's clearly stating, here's my job. I'm very good at it. Our team's wonderful. We have plenty of experience from every type of Canadian. Um, and he's also using, proper words, not war lingo, when he's talking about people that he's working with. He doesn't even see them as
Yeah.
foes. He just sees them as somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
What do you think from that? Again, we're seeing, it looks like somebody that said we could have solved this peacefully. We had the tools, we had the ability. But for some reason, as he stated, things changed with OPS, and the Coventry incident really muddied the water. And and then he's using that they're using that as an example that the protesters changed their tone and were no longer cooperating. When you break down the conversation on purpose, the negotiation on purpose, you shouldn't be allowed to point to that as proof that it broke down. You created it.
That's right.
But yeah, what's your take there, Wayne, on that one? I think we're seeing a lot more honesty this time around.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he wanted to elaborate several times, but because the council doesn't want to hear that damaging evidence, yeah, we haven't got time for this. We need to move on. But he's willing to say much more. But as soon as the guy can actually understand that it's going the wrong way, it's like, yeah, okay, we'll move on. So yeah, it definitely sounds as though he's talking for the people. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know the guy, but yeah, it's certainly a different day, isn't it?
It sure is. And we haven't had an opportunity for impeachment yet. The previous witness, he was impeached by the committee council. Was the first time he was impeached with his own document that he just claimed he didn't remember. Nothing like, I don't think we'll see anything like that here. The OPP, they're not redacting like we see with the OPS. You'll see the OPS will have notes, and then you'll have big blocks just chunked out. You don't see that with the OPP. And I think that's, again, another one of those juxtapositions. When we see the evidence provided by both sides, one is, being very delicate and careful about what's in there. And then the other one says, there you go, transparency. We thought we had a good position. We don't have Joe yet, so we'll keep going here, Chris.
I mean, you could tell when he was talking, he was very relaxed and calm. He didn't need to pause to think of a lie that didn't make him look as bad, like Bell or a few of the others. It was just very relaxed, very charming conversation.
Yeah, and there's a really good his name's Spidey. I think his channel's called Behavioral Artist out of Montreal, and he does a lot of body language work, and it's really interesting to listen to. He explains how you look for clusters of behavior and you don't necessarily look for one. And you can tell, well, you can't tell, but you can do your best to see if there's stress. And if there's stress, it could indicate that there's more to it. One of them is whether or not they can illustrate and use their hands, and whether or not the hands match the words. Because when you're lying, your processing is not fast enough to spit out a lie and then act the lie with your hands. So when someone goes, we had 1, 2, 3 people show up, and then the third one, like when they're using their hands while they talk, and when it matches, that's just truth. They're not filtering. They're not trying to put on a show. They're not doing anything like that. The first witness, we saw very little body language. He was very uncomfortable, and a lot of backpedaling. But I'm very excited to see what else we get out of this one. So back to Chris. Okay, so we're talking about how First Nations and politically yesterday, but now supposed to talk a little bit about the West. You are in BC. I'm in Alberta. If Joe joins us, he's in Edmonton. We know that the convoy kind of started in BC. Some of the first trucks started in BC, made their way across Alberta, picked up steam, and went on. We're hearing some testimony, especially last week, and I'm sure we'll hear some more this week from other OPS officers, that it was a charge from the West. It was a charge from the West. And they kind of started it. And then other convoys were coming from all over. Are we fed up in the West? Are we fed up with government overreach, federalism? Are we just fed up and now it's time to put on and embrace the label of maverick or anti-government or whatever they want to label us as? Is it time to wear that label proudly? Because I think it might be time to stand up proudly. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that there's merit to both sides, right? My fear with that is okay, to put it this way, I think that you can look at multiple different things that you could consider would be the flashpoint that led to the rollout, right? And even for me, it took me 3 days to be like, is this real? And we start seeing more and more. So I think that even those that started it, although it does look like even if the tactics and logistics of the strategy and all that could have been laid out en route. But I still think there was some genuine level towards here's what we want to do, here's what we want to accomplish, we're doing it, whoever wants to get on board, let's get this moving. And so I bet you if you ask the people who originally started this, they had no idea what it was going to turn into. And so what I think it comes back to is that this idea that a lot of us are the minority opinion and that we're in this situation because we've all been isolated. The media tells us we're a minority, or our leader says we're a fringe, unacceptable, all this stuff. But the convoy was really the first time we got to see, okay, where's Canada at? Are we okay with this? Because I don't believe most of 99% of the Canadians I met in my life are not like that. And you can look at the fear response and, give some leniency depending on what people turned into during those 2 years, and some are still willing with opinions. But as far as, I think it's one of those things where I think it would be a disservice to the convoy to claim it as being a Western thing. I think that it was just the first people to say, screw this, I've been in rooms before and nobody puts their hands up and say, you go, okay, I'll do it. Right. And start that process. But there is an argument to be made with regards to the autonomy that each province has, because that's what we've really seen here. You can have a charter, you can have a constitution, but a public health emergency is declared. None of that matters. It takes us 2 years to get into court. Well, how much damage has been done? And we've seen that, right? And even in a situation where we knew the harms. I come from a social services background, right? And advocacy, mental health, all these kinds of things. And I'm just like, nobody? Where are all the early childhood development people, right? And so it is one of those things where I think that there is an argument to be made, for sure, that it started there, but the flicker turned into a flame. So it's whoever carried the torch. it would have been interesting to see if it started in the east, right? Would have people have come, or if it started in the middle, would people have? And I think that, like, for me, it took 3 days, like I said. So it's a matter of people, I think, were shocked as it happened. And then when we saw it played out, I thought to myself, it couldn't have been better, with no violence, bounty castles, kids, families. Like, it took away all of their arguments that they still decided to label people with. But not to take away, like, I think there's something to be said with regards to how the states operates, having autonomy with republic versus a constitutional democracy, because we don't have enough safety nets to protect the public when people want to lose their minds and impose policies without providing evidence. I'm sorry, I don't trust you. Show me your evidence. Period. And what Danielle Smith's doing in Alberta, I think is, I don't know if it's going to go. Maybe Saskatchewan, BC. I'm hoping is not a lost cause. It's a beautiful place. If you just look at Vancouver and all the rest of it, I think more rural. The further you get out from Vancouver, Richmond, Surrey, past there, and further north, nobody wants to put up with this stuff. They want to do what's right by their family and by their neighbors, but the manipulation, I think, is the biggest mistake they ever made. The coercion was really, really off the charts here, and it still is. You go to my health minister's Twitter page, and it's just vaccine clinic here, vaccine clinic here, vaccine clinic all the time, nonstop, totally disconnected from the harms that have been caused. I'll stop there.
You don't have to stop there. Do you think maybe possibly Jason Kenney kind of stoked it by giving us in Alberta, at least at the beginning, the idea that, yeah, we're going to stand up and we're not going to do it. And then slowly, as you know, the press is calling Alberta all these names, and globally is calling Alberta the root of all problems. Slowly, he then starts to, like we heard yesterday from Etienne, that he saw that it was changing into from no to maybe, and then to yes. Do you think that maybe because that happened, we saw a leader that we thought was strong get weak for whatever reason, maybe through name calling or political pressure or whatever it was? Do you think that's when we said, okay, enough? We can't even follow our leader because our leader is getting weak here. And that's it. And that was the final straw for a lot of people around here, because who's speaking for you now? We just lost the premier. We don't have strong representation from the MPs. MLAs are doing some squawking, but they don't seem to have enough power. So was that the final straw for Alberta, and maybe not so much just the West, but at least in Alberta, because we did have, I know I was proud. I know my neighbors were proud when he came out and said, no, we're not doing it. And we, happily walked the streets and enjoyed it. But then when he switched it and put it on us with no new information, in fact, the information was just getting worse for it. Do you think that was enough to get us going to say, enough, we're going to join this protest, this convoy starting in BC, and snowball from there? And including with the Coots stuff too, because Alberta was the only Western province that also did some demonstrations that large on the border. Do you think we just had enough?
Well, I think it's, and I'm not by far not a Kenney apologist, but I look at the landscape that he had with AHS, and I think when removing Bernie Yu, I think he came out with good intentions. I still think he's a globalist, right? But at the same time, I've never had direct interactions with him, but people around him that said, he does shoot straight, but at the same time he's bendable. Okay, well, that makes sense. But in his situation, coming out against it, when you have this machine, like what we see with happening with Danielle, anybody speaks out against the narrative. Well, back then, it was even more hyper, right? And so I start looking at AHS, and Dr. Makis covers a lot of the problems with AHS, right? He's the first person that made me kind of go, okay, there might be some difficulties here. And I saw a lot of carryovers from the Notley government that were causing a lot of problems. And so for me, I thought to myself, he's in a very difficult situation. He comes out, he may be doing it on principle, but you've got your health services and the executive in Hinshaw. They've all towed this one line. It put him in a difficult spot. But I think it was good because, like you said, had he held more of a Danielle Smith position, I don't know how much Alberta would have been like, screw this. We got to get involved. This is not we got to stand up. This is our moment, right? So I look at both sides as far as what, he didn't really have a choice unless he wanted to stand on principle. And I still think, take a Kerry Lake approach. The media attacks with ridiculousness. Get in their face and point out how ridiculous they are. And eventually they'll either, change their tune, or every now and again you're going to make a reporter look really bad, and it'll be a clip that goes viral that shows how biased our media is, like with Aiken and all these other people that just think they have absolutely no accountability for what they do. Just stoke the fire, stoke the fire. You got to get in the face, not aggressive. Mocking is the best tool. It's more healthy as well than carrying anger with you.
Well, be careful. If you mock too much, you'll be designated as a terrorist group. Just ask Dialong. Right? You mock too well.
I didn't catch the clip yesterday. I just saw Marazzo tweet out that they actually went there, and I'm like, so I'm Googling just to see where to get that sound bite, because it's a perfect example as well too. But it shows the confidence that they have over the establishment narrative, because there's not going to be anyone that goes on CBC. You're not going to have a pundit on that says, by the way, that's a bloody meme. What are you doing? Like, you're that desperate for justification to brutalize your people that you're going to use a meme to do so. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was the only boogeyman. They probably just said, do we have any boogeyman? And they said, nope. And they go, what's the next we got? And they said, I don't know. These guys seem to have a cool logo. Let's blame them. They don't like you, so will that work? And then
they always look for someone. That's what I said when the conflict first started. Like, I hope my message when I was on the old account was, don't centralize your leadership. Don't give them a figurehead. Again, it's, collaborate, have liaisons, and it's not, I didn't do that. That's what they already had planned, and that's what they did. They did everything perfect. Some of the stuff that was said, and if you want to be critical, but as far as that, just comes down to professionalism, not criminality, violence, and all this other stuff, right? And so when you have people that are from all backgrounds, like using race, when I started seeing with Rupa out there on the ground, like it was the internet that really, without it, if we didn't have streams, if we didn't have people that were out there, think of how easy that narrative could have been created. Similar to January 6th, right? It's just like, that's kind of what I think they might have been looking for, is that, we're going to overthrow our government. Are you kidding me? We have systems and processes in place. We're looking for, that kind of thing. But we're slowly seeing that a lot of those systems seem to be, to put it mildly, less than full of integrity. But moving forward, I think that the Canadians realized, out of the convoy, they realized that we are not alone. There are many of us. And so if round 2 happens again, I'm nervous. But I think it'll probably happen anyways, because they don't seem to be slowing down. But I think Canadians are smart enough to know that, like, not smart enough. I mean, they can see what happened. They can expect, if the government sees another one of these coming, do it the exact same way. Keep out the groups that are looking to agitate, and don't allow for people to grab the spotlight. Keep the politics out of it. If it's in the spring, if they don't want bouncy castles, let's do slip and slides.
Yeah, and I think you read my mind, because I was about to ask Wayne something related to that. So, Wayne, February 13th is when this report from this inquiry commission should be presented. It could come on or before February 13th, 2023, because it has to be submitted to the Senate and the House by within 1 year of its invocation, and that was February 14th. If it comes back and it says, basically, in a nutshell, protesters did nothing wrong, police overreacted, and federal government was the instigator and the catalyst to the overreaction. Here are now some safeguards we put in place, and the government has to jump through these hoops if they even come close to trying to use that again. And then that spurs on a desire to have the second one, the part two, go and finish this up, the conclusion, let's go and finish that chat, whatever it's called. If Canada did do that, and if Canada had another organized large protest, trucks, farms, everything, and let's say they even put it all outside of the city, and then they bust and carpooled themselves all in and just had a massive protest on Parliament Hill, do you think the world would look at that as a bunch of whiny babies going at it again? Or do you think that would be inspiration to other countries and other people to watch and maybe do something similar themselves? What would be your take if Canada did that again?
No, it would definitely be a positive, because, I mean, just look at what's happening in Europe. I mean, they're all looking at their either mandates, protests, the fertilizer, the collapsing of farming. We know it's all linked, and each country that then rises up is seen as inspirational. All the countries joined together in America after the truckers in Canada. It was an amazing event.
It fizzled, but it was a good start.
Well, that's right. Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? Unless we see everything that's going on, why did it fizzle out? Was there too much comeback from the police? Like in Canada, they froze the bank accounts. I mean, was there a similar sort of thing going in America? You don't know everything unless you see all these podcasts. Like some of you guys in Canada were streaming 24/7.
Hmm.
Unless you saw actually every single thing, you wouldn't really understand why. I mean, some of the ones in was it Holland? I think they had these tractors driving around the field like a bicycle. There were so many of them. It was just certain things that they're doing to attract attention because they knew that helicopters would fly over, and of course they'd see it.
Yes, I saw that.
You can shut down the media, but you can't shut down everything. They will find a way to get the message out.
Yeah, and do you think that this is connected to a single plan, or is just coincidental that all these countries are having protests for similar reasons around overreach mandates and things like fertilizer, water, other intrusions into the regular business and lives of people? Do you think that's just a coincidence that, this is all happening at the same time? Or is it maybe a little bit more orchestrated? We don't have to get into too deep on that, but when multiple events happen, very similar, same tone, same rrhetoric, just different language, you start to wonder, is there a common script? And they just did Google Translate on it and send it out. Because I can tell you the media in Canada definitely had a script because it was the so-called Freedom Convoy. So-called everywhere. You would see that preface, Freedom Convoy. So we had a script here. But do you think maybe there's a global something going on, because it seems to be at least similar, if not coordinated?
Yeah, did the Canadian government have a media contract with all the medias? Because
Yeah, basically.
it
Basically.
was several hundred million to basically not put anything out negative to pharmaceutical industry. But then anytime we held a protest in London, I mean, I say we because I only went to two of them. I just wasn't strong enough to go. But they had like 2 to 3 million people marching around the city of London, which is quite a spectacle. But no media would cover it.
I didn't hear about it.
Social media. But if they did actually put something in the paper, it would be anti-vaxxers, and they'd film a short section that showed maybe a dozen people turned up. Let's forget about the 2 million people behind me.
Right.
But these few anti-vaxxers.
And disheveled a bit, and maybe the hair is in the wind, is up all over the place. And, those are the people they're searching for.
Take the most radical person to portray the masses. You can take reasoning away only if it paints your picture you're trying to portray. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. And in Canada, we didn't even have the pictures. They just used the names and the labels and said the entire group is that way. We didn't even have the disheveled or the radical or even a video of some crazy talk. I think the closest we got would have been, and sorry if you're listening and you don't like this, but maybe Pat King's rhetoric was a little bit close to the line. But that would be it. That'd be it. He wasn't talking about doing things that would get him in too much trouble. But that was about it. So globally, Canada would be supported if we did it again. Yeah, and
when I was on Twitter, I mean, the feeds were just full, basically, of people sharing so much, because there wasn't just one person sharing footage. There was numerous groups, but that's all it was. And of course, Twitter doesn't like it, so people then start getting banned all over. You had a little bit on Facebook, but again, it would be very controlled. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it, because at the end of the day, if you don't get what you wanted out of this inquiry, then it's just going to push forward, because what's coming down the pipe next is, okay, if you look at the bigger picture, did you see there's a story in Oxford in this country that they want to ban cars from moving outside of their borough, basically for a large part of the year. So you'd only be allowed out of your area for 100 days a year. And they're actually going to trial that in Oxford. They're going to split the city into 6 different boroughs, districts. I mean, what? That's bad. But that's all part of that climate green agenda.
Yeah, and I think where they're headed with that is autonomous vehicles and ride or vehicles as a service. They don't want people to own vehicles. They're headed towards vehicles as a service, like the subscription Uber type of thing, where if you just need a car, you'll order a car and it'll take you there, but you don't own a car.
But then
That's where
if you have a carbon account, which everybody would be supposedly forced to have,
yeah.
you wouldn't still then be allowed to, because your phone would say, well, sorry, but you're not going anywhere today.
Oh, for sure. And it's all about being able to control transportation and the movement of people. If we transition into cars as a service, you know, on its face sounds great until they decide to shut it off. And then what do? You don't have a car anymore. So it may seem economically, yeah, because they're going to do the whole economic spin, and it fits right into the you'll own nothing and be happy mantra.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
never
because you
did
don't own the
then.
car.
You thought it was just weird, but the more that goes on, you
Mhm.
start to look at things a little bit deeper, and you think, wow.
Yeah, and can you imagine that button on their side? We're going to do a lockdown because of whatever. Oh, well, stop the cars. All right, no more transportation. You can't even order the car. Well, what about food? Well, we'll deliver food, but you're not allowed to use a vehicle. That would be like that would be like the setup.
Have
Um,
you had anything in your country about a food problem? Because here at the moment, although they tried to, well, I'll say there are numerous hundreds of fires at food distribution depots all around the world, all supposedly coincidental. But our government arranged for a multi-billion pound contract for food rations. Now, this
oh,
is to
wow.
supply, yeah, this was months and months ago. It's the start, I think it was in September, the contract was starting from. So it's supplying schools, prisons, hospitals, troops mainly. Now, why? Why?
Well, yeah,
Because
good
they
question.
knew that down the pipe there'd be problems.
Well, or maybe because I'm just going to be devil's advocate on this one, or maybe they're just anticipating global interruptions and chains and stuff and getting ready. Maybe they have more information than we do. I've looked into the fires at food processing facilities. Ironically enough, there was a couple in the States where they were related to an airplane crash nearby. So that caught my attention because the headline of the article or video I was checking out said, "Are they using airplanes now to attack food processing plants?" So I read the article, and yeah, they were definitely taking the angle that it looked like maybe they're using pilots in this way. However, being a pilot, understanding a lot of things, I have other sources, so I watched some other stuff about exactly what was going on, weather conditions, the approach, how they were doing the RNAV and stuff like that. And nope, straight up accident, not intentional at all. It was a wonderful pilot. She did a great job, and she just happened to run into a misidentified smokestack that was put on the charts illegally. So what actually happened with that particular incident was the Environmental Protection Agency said this particular building needs a smokestack so many feet high. And the top of that smokestack was above what the FAA had reported for that smokestack. So what happened was, after a quick investigation, the people who put that smokestack up lied to the FAA and the EPA. They told the EPA that the smokestack is tall enough, and they told the FAA it is below that level. And the truth was, it was right in the middle of those two. So when a pilot was using the data provided for the height of that tower, it was off by several hundred feet. And that was that. That was the end of that. But that was near a processing plant. It hit like the beginning of the building, and it landed on the lobby part of the building because it was a processing plant smokestack that we're talking about. But then it was spun into, is there an attack on food processing? So that's why I'm going to push it back a little bit on that one, because I did look into some of that rhetoric, wondering if it was real, because nothing would scare me more than kamikaze private pilots. No, seriously, because if that even happened or came close to happening, they'd be shutting down private pilot altogether. And that's a privilege and a luxury that people can use. And it's also, I think it's important for survival to be able to have all your transportation options available privately. So I would hate to see that happen. So anyway, sorry to kind of take you off track here, but I did look into a couple of them. And another one was, it was just an airplane crash, a student pilot. It just happened to be in the vicinity of. It wasn't even on the property of. It was just an airplane crash. Unfortunately, we do have private pilot airplane accidents that are genuine. But I can't speak to the world ones, Wayne. But what I would just kind of put out there is, once a theory or something gets spread, all of a sudden everybody's finding them all because they're all paying attention to it now. Yeah.
It's just when you start to see a rise in cases, it's like with the figures of death cases at the moment, when it becomes more common, you start to think, well, that's strange. Even the scientists will say, or the doctors, even on the government websites, ONS government website here said, in so many months you had a dramatic increase in the deaths of people. Then that's something that would catch people's eye. It's like all the depots. It's like, well, that's kind of unusual. Even the biggest food processing plant in France, that went up, and that was just a few months ago.
Yeah, what we'd like to see then is that the cause of
mind, isn't it? But still.
Yeah. So, for example, like deaths in Alberta went up 600% for unknown causes, ill-defined causes. Yeah, that's when you should really pay attention, when you have a spike in unlabeled. So if you had a whole bunch of fires and they were marked as undetermined for the cause, oh my, because typically the fire department can't figure out what happened. So if we saw a spike in just labeled unknown cause, well, then I would be all over that too, especially with deaths in Alberta, 600% increase over 2019 of unknown. And for the people that are listening, that's 3,362 people died in 2021, and they don't know why. COVID is listed. I think it's number 3 on the list for the deaths, is around 1,000. Drug overdose was number 10 on there. A lot of common stuff is also on there. But to not be able to know why that many people are dying with a 600% increase, and then to take down my video because we're talking the truth, is a bit shocking because, yeah. Chris, now, one of the cool things you and I have been chatting about, and sorry for jumping and putting this out there, is we want to reach a lot of people, because we think that voices are important, and people's stories are important. And you're looking and dabbling into doing some podcasting and creating some sort of program and platform. First of all, kudos, good job. That's a great idea. It's a lot of fun. Just have your backup streams ready. That's all I can say to that. But you want to talk a bit about what you're thinking around there and kind of flesh it out? Because I know a lot of your followers are here today, mostly on Rumble, it looks like. But they're here to check you out.
Well, I think I appreciate that. And it's, I'm not a fan of self-promotion, putting myself out there.
That's the first step to podcasting, though. You got to get used to it.
That's why I'm here. And I've been working on a few things over the last couple of months, trying to see. I was really interested to see how the Emergencies Act was going to go, if we were going to see the rhetoric return with regards to what we see with the threats and potential reintroduction of restrictions. And I think a lot of what I get sucked into with everybody as well is that repetitive behavior of just describing on Twitter and social media what's happening day after day. And, I got to the point, I announced, okay, I'm working on an initiative, started looking at all the pillars, made it completely overcomplicated because that's just what I do. And so tackled my perfectionism and threw it off to the side and just figured, we don't have enough people out there that are looking or willing. I see a lot more defeatist mentalities coming onto, into the fray. Mental health has always been my number one thing. Even before the pandemic, the suicide numbers have always been something that keeps me up at night. And so when I thought to myself, what do people need? How do we move forward, right? Hope for the best, plan for the worst. And so I figured best way to do that is, I want to try and provide a platform for people to get their voices out. And at the same time, create a space where people can come, and if they can come away from, listening to me and whoever the guests are, or if I'm on a show, if they have the ability to come away, ideally having learned something, preferably smiling, feeling a little bit better, just to help take the pressure off a little bit. I'll acknowledge it's bad, but we don't have enough people focusing on what needs to be done on the ground. Like, how do we correct this? Because we're still very isolated. We're still, it's the reintroduction into society for those that have been persecuted over the last couple of years, and those that those that weren't persecuted. their world has completely changed as well too, trying to make a lot of sense of it. And so I don't necessarily want to go down the route of doing like conspiracy based shows or anything like that, but I want to identify authors. I want to that have written books. I want to identify people who put themselves out there in the beginning, completely non-political. Doesn't mean I won't have people who are very political on, but I want to take a very neutral approach to getting different, showing people that you can have civil discourse, showing people that there are things you can be doing locally in the community. So trying to help with community organizing, having groups on that are doing that and providing them with a platform. I don't want to really get too much into debates, although we don't always agree, but when we don't agree, it's still civil discourse and we can have different opinions and we're not throwing things at each other. And I think that if people can see more of that and have more access to positive content, but still, I don't want people to think that I'm just going to turn my back on that chaos and go over here and focus on creating freaking sandboxes and gardens and stuff like that needs to be happen. But I find that it's sucking my soul watching the same thing over and over again. And it doesn't matter what evidence you have. It doesn't matter what the law says. None of these people are held accountable. And the suffering and the re-victimizing. And again, people get mad at me when I'm not attacking the Conservative Party when I'm asking hard questions. And I think that's, or suggesting that the leader should be speaking out more. I don't enjoy doing it. It honestly, every time I hit the send button, it's just, but it's a point, right? You have to, if you're not going to stand up for people, and that's the realization I've had to come to in the last week or so, which is why I'm on, is that if no one is going to speak out on behalf of the people in this country, you're saying they don't have value.
Yep.
And to me, I want to do whatever I can to help them with, learning, identifying the tools they need, identifying different options for resources or a way of connectivity locally, but encourage people to stay strong. Whatever they're throwing at us, we have to be, conscious and aware of how much we're internalizing. But the rest of the time, we need to be focused on. I still wake up in the morning and I smile because I'm still here, right? And so what I do with that day, it starts. And it's one of those things. I've had a lot of mentors throughout my life, and so the ability to share some of that wisdom with people is an honor to be able to carry their legacy. And most of them aren't here anymore. But one of them was, I always say, people, when I used to be an advocate, I'd be, how are you doing today? And I said, it's a great day by day. And this Scottish guy, brilliant, really thick rolling R's. He pulls me aside and goes, no, you got it all wrong. This is one of my early 20s. You got it all wrong, Chris, moment by moment. Okay. And I've lived that way ever since. And if you do that, then you'll start to recognize when you're going up that hill, have I put too much in my backpack? Do I need to stop for a second and take a few things out? Let's reflect on the good and the bad experiences, take what you learn from it, and then leave the rest behind, because I can imagine it's extremely heavy for a lot of people right now. And, we have to persevere. We have to find a way. So that's kind of what I'm doing. It's going to be more of a, I'm hoping just to attend, be on your podcast, other people's podcasts. If you think that, can't always guarantee I'll be coherent, because even when you ask me a question, it's like, okay, let's process. How should I answer it? How do I not necessarily, I don't like to self-censor, but I want to make sure that when I speak, I'm not going off too deep, where when I come back and I watch it, like with one of the answers I gave before, it's kind of like, well, I should tighten it up because it's not just us on a call here where I can qualify that. There are going to be people coming back. So it's kind of learning how to navigate through this. But if I can add value to other people's stuff, and then behind the scenes be doing interviews with, and giving them a bit of giving them pretty much creative control. If you wrote a book and you have certain questions, let's get that dialogue going. Let's get you out there. Not have any, if you can create a reputation where you're not looking for the gotcha moment. You're right. Not looking for those viral clicks, right? Like I don't really care about, I like having followers. I like the views, and that kind of stuff is important. But I think it comes more so from, if you're doing it, you're genuine, people will, if they're interested, they'll listen to it. And I think that if you create that, for lack of a better term, safe space, I think I should be able to, people will reach out. I'll reach out to them, and if there's ever ways to collaborate, I think that's the starting point of just getting more positive messaging out there.
Yeah, there's no question that we can use these platforms to do a lot more of that. And I'd like to ask Chris's followers, if you're out there, go ahead and give him a thumbs up if you think he's on the right track. Keeping it level-headed. Mental health is a very important subject. Keeping it balanced but fair, and dancing that line of self-censorship. It's a very, very difficult one. And also being political, like officially political, it's a very difficult one for me as well, because you're dancing that line of pandering. and I don't want to pander. It's not my platform to pander. If you don't like 90% of what I say, well, then maybe I'm not for you. But if you do like 90% of what I say, well, maybe look into that 10% and see why. Why are we not overlapping there? And maybe there's some room for both of us to work on that. I like to keep it, as fair as possible, but I hear you when you say, "Hey, look, you're going to push send," and that tweet, it may not be Pierre's best tweet of the day, but it's honest and it's frank and it's exactly what we should be talking about. Because one thing I'm concerned about is we get a Pierre echo chamber, just like Justin had one, and when that chamber is so strong, and the media picks up on it, and the global media picks up on it, it becomes almost impossible to shake. And if that's what we're going to do, we're just going to have a blue Justin echo chamber. I think, it's not going to be as bad as what Justin did, but it's not going to be the best we can be. So holding Pierre's feet to the fire, I think, is a necessary job. I think if we're not doing that as independent journalists or podcasters or influencers or whatever it is that we're doing, then we're not doing a good service at all. And if you really want to just hear one opinion and one strong side, there's plenty of those out there. You will certainly find it. Various levels of anger and frustration, but you'll find them on both sides. So James, I see that you're posting some good messages here. Look, man, I don't know where you live. If you're in Alberta or West, we will get together at some point. But if you'd like to be on the show, James, maybe one of your lunch breaks or something like that, let me know. We'll connect. And that goes the same for Denise and Clay and all the others in the chat. Go ahead and let me know, because we do want to bring the voice of the people to the platform. And to kind of touch a little bit on some of the concerns you had about your show there, Chris, the imperfections are what makes it genuine. When people are listening and there's a mess up or ramble or a little too long or incorrect word, what they learn right away is you're not a scripted stooge. You're also not a professional messenger. You're a genuine, authentic one. And that's what gives us a lot more confidence when listening to the real deal. Can you imagine if we were polished and professional and we had the lights at the back and all the other stuff? The quick assumption would be, well, you're media as well. Vancouver Island, right on, BC. There we go. We got another Wester, James. Yeah, if you ever want to be on the show, let me know. Just traveling at the moment. Boss is driving. Hey, boss, take care of James. We want him to be safe. And also give him an increase. He's been using a lot of his data plan this month. So give him a bonus this month. Wayne, so as you're hearing podcasting, like you got a camera, you got a microphone, you got a mug that people can look at, and you've got some stories, you got some insight, and you certainly have a lot of love on Getter and Twitter. Have you considered maybe doing something a little bit more active with getting your message out there?
Probably last year I was probably doing at least one every couple of weeks. Now, you have to bear in mind the more time that I spend on the computer, the harder it is for me. So what I try to do is balance through my day is by having these anti-inflammatory drinks to then bring down the inflammation, because this is what makes my days so much worse. But no, I enjoy these because talking to real people, you're not only giving your point, but you're listening to their views and you take that on board. And that's a great learning curve for everyone. Plus, whoever else is listening or then following a podcast, you get a lot of empathy. But it's a win-win, isn't it? But yeah, I had thought about doing something, and at the moment it just seems to be I'm just getting back into doing a podcast with someone. I mean, obviously we had a chance conversation recently, Jason, and that's where I came from. I was speaking to UK Colin probably just so many weeks before that. There's a guy on TNT Radio. I don't know if you've heard of that at all.
No, not yet.
Check it out, because there's a lot of people that actually give casts to it, but it's all over the world, whether it's America, Canada, and you get a lot of protest people on there, and it's very good insight. And I did a podcast on his show, Rick Munn, but they have so many different commentators. It's very interesting. Not just talking about this issue, but everything to do with protesting, climate change, all the different things that are hitting countries at the moment. There's a friend of mine, she does a radio show who put the show out today, Jules Sirkin.
Yeah, I saw her tweet.
We're talking about doing something, but of course she has the same issue. So the more time you spend on the computer, the more these neurological effects really affect you. So you need to do it because you need to keep talking. But at the same time, you then have to think, well, okay, what can I do today? I can balance that for an hour and then step away for the rest of the day or something. So yeah, it's how to go about it. I mean, I know people who I talk to, whether it's through Getter or whatever. Would it be, because I know some people in America, they purely do a sort of a helpline, kind of, through their own experience and how they've dealt with things. So you could do something purely down that road. I enjoy talking about everything, and this is why our topics will basically go in any direction, because I'm quite comfortable in the things I see and things I understand. Not everybody is quite on the same page yet, which is why you'll often see people on social media just basically drop you as a friend because they think there's something wrong with you. Well, I'm sorry, but your media isn't telling you the truth. It doesn't go down very well, which is what I'm seeing just this year, because I've been very quiet on certain social medias because things like Facebook, they really, really come down hard. And of course, those people haven't seen anything negative from my channel because they just basically won't listen to me. And that's the problem. Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking of something, but I don't quite know one or the other.
Yeah, and it'd probably
I'm happy
be
to chat with any of you guys, and I'm pretty sure because there's so many things that are relevant to all of us. And today, even just talking about protest or WF or whatever, there's so many things that are quite relevant to us. So.
Yeah, I've received many comments about you being on the show. They appreciate the international perspective, outside of Canada perspective, and your actual life story is part of it as well. So who you are. So I would highly encourage you, if you need any assistance, the tech or anything like that. You have friends, and we'd love to hear more from you, for sure. And yeah, and if anybody is listening to this, what do you think about having a click-in type of show where people can, like, we used to have the old call-in shows or the AM radio type of format where you can just call in and say, hey, my name is James, I'm in Vancouver, on Vancouver Island, and here's my gripe. I spend too much on my cell phone bill. And then we go ahead and talk about it. And what do you think about that? Maybe opening up that whole... but we won't be call-in, it will be click-in type of format to get onto the show like this.
I mean, that goes in any direction, doesn't it?
Yep, you can be striked right away, or you can have a great day. And maybe we would do more Rumble-based if that's kind of the format, because YouTube may be unstable. Okay, I am getting audio, but no video yet, so I'll keep an ear on that one, and then I'll pop that up when we have it. I
love the idea of a click-in. Any way that we can do anything to encourage participation, and I just think, again, of the healing factor of just, I was a crisis line volunteer for years, so for me at the end of the call, I always knew that people felt better. Not always, but just people having that opportunity to connect, engage, and vent if they need or ask questions, and just kind of throw things into the basket and let's have some dialogue, right? I love it.
And to answer James' question, yeah, sure. Like Twitter Spaces, any platform where the voice of the people can get together and talk would be great. What I'm thinking is for more video as well. So you could come on anonymous with no video, or you can be with video.
Video is better because you'd actually connect better with people. I did Clubhouse most of last year, just talking to all sorts of people around the world, and it was brilliant, but you don't have that human connection. If you can see the look that your words have on somebody's face, it strikes such a bigger impact.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that people from all sides would feel comfortable calling in or clicking in. because I really do enjoy speaking to people with dissenting views of mine, the opposite view of mine, because that's when I learn the most about where they're coming from. I don't have to agree with what they're saying, but I certainly like to look at their perspective, because it does help. And I have noticed, quite a few times, I would adjust my own thinking when I got more information. And I think the biggest example of that would be around my empathy towards the Ottawa residents that were impacted. I can be honest when I say I really didn't care much, because I thought we have the right to protest and that's where we do it. But through some of the testimony and, opening my mind, I definitely have some empathy for them. There's no reason why we should have did all of that. I'm not condoning the EA being used because residents were upset, but keep an open mind and be open to it. Fair, James. Yep. And then Discord's another good one, James. There's a couple platforms I got to look into using because you can actually be free. Denise, all of my cameras are covered up on purpose. I don't have and never had a cell phone tracking device. You're 100% right, Denise. Yep. And that's why I can't find you. Now I know why. I'm just joking. But no, you're 100% right. I also, on some of my laptops, have, sticker over top of it because as a techie, I do know camera can be turned on with the notification light disabled. So it's absolutely possible. It's not a paranoia. Just because you're paranoid, it doesn't mean they're not watching. So keep that in mind. It's great with yeah. So something like that for sure. Rumble's going to be good, I think, until C11 kicks in. Once C11 kicks in, we might find Rumble might be closer to YouTube when it comes to forced censorship and blocking. But Odyssey is another one that I'll look at as well. I think you have to reach a certain level of subscribers before they take you. So I'll relook into that. Yeah, I'm not sure if I reached that or not yet. I don't watch the numbers like that. But yeah, so thank you very much. I do know we're going to be starting up again. And if you guys like this, look at that. There it is. If you guys like this kind of format where it's just a few of us chatting about various topics, let me know in the comments. I do read them. And if you like the idea of Chris becoming the next platform for the voice of people, let him know. Hit him up on Twitter. His Twitter is in his name here. One of the most entertaining, and you're definitely not going to get cookie cutter and echo chamber from him. You're going to get a lot more than that. Any closing comments there, Chris?
I appreciate the kind words. It's I think we're all coming together. We're all, like I said, I think yesterday, we're all white belts in this and working our way up through the process, and we'll work the kinks out. But I think that we got a good group. A lot of people just looking for something different, and if they find that with us, fantastic. So stay tuned, and it's just repetitive. You just got to keep going, keep being there, showing up, and we'll see where it goes. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited.
Yeah, we got some great voices. Yeah, we got some great voices already out there, like the Andy Lee Show, Joe Rampart, Donald Best, and soon Chris from Canada. All right, everybody, thank you very much. He's taking a seat. I'm going to make sure the audio's on this time. Okay.
Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
There we go. We got audio.
Good afternoon, Commissioner, for the record.
So that's the second time he asked that question. Were there alternatives for the protesters that wanted to do it legal and peaceful? Last time he asked that question, the answer was nope. And as I talked about in my after show or whatever it's called, I identified like when would they have the chance? They were just standing there intimidating and then moving the line forward. This witness, again, great witness, he said the same thing. Yeah, there wasn't anything else. At first, he was kind of saying like, well, if they just move and they go over there and over there and over there, then they would have been okay. But Paul or the commissioner pushed back and said, no, let me ask that question again. You may not have the answer, but let me ask it again. Were they offered an alternative? In other words, what he wants to hear, and he knows he's not going to because he's asked it twice now, was before the protesters were booted, stampled on, pushed away, were they given another location to go to? I do want to let people know that are listening. The quick answer was that was the deal that the convoy organizers were working on with the city, the deal that got quashed later on. They were going to move the trucks out. They were going to be outside of the city. One location was Van Cleek Hill, which is about 40 minutes northeast of Ottawa, up to 417. So it would have been a significant movement of the trucks, and they were going to start busing people to come in. So there was a plan being worked on, but not an alternative that was given to the protesters when the boots came down. Because at that point, the deal got quashed. OPS is the one that said no more, and then they came in. So I like that question because we've heard it from him twice now. Get the comments later. Now, I do have a ton of comments. The first one I want to go to. So, Tom Curry, the lawyer for Peter Slowly, boy, did he ever try to put words in his mouth, in the inspector's mouth. Tried many times. He would say these big, long statements, and then inspector would just say, okay. Not confirming, not agreeing, not to denying, but indicating that that's new information to me. So, thanks for sharing that with me. So clearly there's a bunch of that going on with Tom Curry, the lawyer for Peter Slowly. There is typically division in protest groups. So one of his responses, inspector's responses, was Tom Curry was trying to establish that, there's this group, you can negotiate with them, maybe or maybe not. They're in control, they can make things happen. And the response from the inspector was proper. Typically, there is division in protest groups. Again, this wasn't officially organized. This was grassroots. So indicating that maybe some of the leaders like Tom Razzo or Tamara Lynch or others were in control of 100% of people that had grievances against the government. And by the way, it looks like they want to say coast to coast because they keep saying Coutts and Windsor were heavily influenced by Ottawa. So I guess the implication is these few, volunteer leaders, convoy organizers are responsible for coast to coast when even the government can't do that. I saw some comments about him standing up for protesters. Of course, the main thing that he's going to be focusing on here is he's got a reputation. He honors his reputation. Trust is very important to him in his line of work. Especially he's going to be known after this. His face will be out there. So when he's working tomorrow and there's another protest and he's got to go in there with goodwill, he absolutely is going to be doing that on his honor and his integrity. So there's no question that he's going to make sure that he's not doing things that will put that into question. And that means, sometimes there's uncomfortable questions and he's got to just deer in headlight, like, wow, I didn't know that. We'll get to that in a moment here. One of the questions that Tom asked, I thought was very sneaky, because what he did was he snuck the EA into the question to imply that the EA was one option. That's sneaky. Like you ask a general question, do you think it's bad that protesters are horrible to the neighbors and the sky is blue? Do you agree with that? Well, yeah, this is pretty easy to agree with. But in this case, he was kind of sneaking in. The EA gave you the ability to deal with it, correct? Yeah, but it was unnecessary. Because then he pointed to, the inspector pointed to correctly, that the grievances were the common link coast to coast, Alberta, Windsor, other groups coming from wherever. It was the common thread on that was grievances was similar, but not necessarily the organization or the allegiances. And yeah, it's not the truckers or the organizers. It was the grievances that brought everybody together for this protest coast to coast. Government of Canada, they're up to it again, right? Leading in general questions. I don't know anything about Farfarda, a Quebec group, Farfada. I don't know anything about them. I can't even spell it or look it up right now. So anybody in my chat can throw me a link to them. A couple times now I've heard that group come up, so I kind of want to learn about them. But what I do know is they're just a group that the government keeps labeling as one of these groups to be worried about, kind of like Dialong. But in this case, it's a Quebec group, and as the government of Canada said, they had one member who was spouting out some pretty extreme, aggressive stuff. And then the way she worded the question was, if that's the kind of attitude and that grew, would that then suggest that possibly there could be an entrenchment? So one guy screaming, I don't like the government so much. And then the question is, well, if a whole bunch of that happened and then a whole bunch of that, and then they became entrenched, would that be a problem? Well, sure. Yeah. Well, what a weird question is that? But here they're reaching. I think the government is very, very desperate. The government of Canada's questions are very hollow. They're not adding any substance or material to the situation, the inquiry at all, and it definitely not establishing the foundation for the use of the Emergency Act. To point the commissioner to one Quebec, a member of a group that barely anybody knows about, as some sort of proof that they were going to start entrenching, and that's why they needed to do that. I'm feeling, lots of empathy for the government because it's pathetic. We also remember that we had 70% of the trucks that were moved under the agreement with the city. We had testimony during the first full week around this agreement with the city manager, and Tom Razzo and team were moving trucks, and they got up to about 70% or so that they thought they could move or were moving. And but it looks like the government was saying, nope, unless we had 100%, every single truck, every single piece of litter, and every single Coke can had to be removed, or else we were going to come down. In other words, we're going to paint a goal line that you can never get to, just to say you failed, and then use that against you later. Gross. I'm embarrassed about that. These are elected officials acting this way. That's ridiculous, but I'm glad it's coming out, because I don't think the average Canadian would agree with that. Nobody's 100%, and it's very ridiculous. Brendan Miller, Freedom Corp. Go, Brendan. Let's go, Brendan. You're doing a good job. Looks like you got a haircut. I think you got it yesterday. Looking good. Keep it up. Bringing up that trucker proposal. That was wonderful. So for the people that aren't really fully aware of it, this was this agreement that they were working on. And it looks like this particular one was even approved by the RCMP, had lots of buy-in from various levels. It was clear that there was a little bit of verbiage and stuff, but overall they were good. And what was interesting was this particular witness was not aware. Hold on a second, I got one more first. They wanted, okay, right. So the substance of this agreement was they were going to get in a meeting with federal cabinet or government members, and what they had to do was denounce any violence or unlawful activity. So clearly, loudly say, don't do anything wrong, which I'm sure it would have been just fine with, because they've always been saying that anyways. And once they got the meeting, they would be encouraging the trucks to leave so the protest could be over. And this witness, he said, is this the general of it? And the answer was correct. And then this witness didn't realize that that agreement or that proposal did move up the chain, made it all the way to a meeting, but then was quashed on the 13th as the EA took over. So that look that you saw at the end there was him finding out for the first time that, yep, it looks like there could have been an out. EA was definitely not necessary, and this agreement was already on the table in front of the federal government. And I think that deer in headlight blank look that we saw there was his realization that, didn't know that out was there and on the table, and that kind of changes things in his mind. It took a little while to process, but it was clear to me that that was new information to him, and he didn't like that at all, and it might have changed the way he saw the situation. I will commend him quite a bit, though, because he is going like right down the middle. I don't see him taking a side. He is exactly what you want in the liaison, which is leaning a little bit more towards the police force and the police activities, because they are still the official public servants. But also, compromising, understanding, and negotiating with protesters of all kinds. And he was very clear that there were opportunities very early on to negotiate this to far more peaceful. Couple things that he mentioned was, if they were able to get an agreement going, would they, if moving 30-60% of the people out, would it have required less resources to maintain the protest and deal with it? And the answer is, well, of course, yes. So if the convoy truckers or the convoy organizer was able to meet with the federal government, do this deal, and let's assume that Tom Razzo had about 70% buy-in from the truckers, they did the deal. Didn't result in a change of mandate, but that's not the agreement. The agreement is, if you have the deal, you have the meeting, you go pull the trucks out. So had they done that, looks like there could have been about 70% less people there, And then maybe it would have been very clear and a lot easier with the resources they keep referring to as being stretched to have continued to deal with it as is. No additional powers, no additional police forces. So I think one of the things he was trying to help the commissioner understand was there was something in play where it didn't make much sense to him why you wouldn't focus on getting the large cooperative group out. To him, that was a surprise. He was a little bit confused by that. The Ottawa Police Services came up after the Freedom Corp, and all they wanted to do was talk about the lessons learned, more of the same, learning from it, understanding after the fact. And what I want to highlight there to the people watching is when you see that happen out of a lawyer or something like that, what they're trying to do is at least get some positive responses out of the witness, because basically anything they're going to ask is going to be counter to what they want, and it's probably not going to help them. So this is a way of facing a witness who you wouldn't consider super cooperative or helpful to you, but still have them provide positive answers to you, because positive answers do help. So if you're getting the witness to say yes or I agree or correct, you can kind of get away with a little bit of narrative injection. And he was kind of doing a little bit of that. But he was very keen on expressing how they learned some lessons, and they've now built up the OPS PLT team. And I felt that kind of, it wasn't even questioning. It was kind of like, hey, did you know we're doing better now? And don't you think that's a good idea? Well, correct. That's desperate. It looks desperate. But, I guess what we want to hear is some lessons learned and some improvements were happening. I don't know how that helps the government bolster the position of having the EA, but there you go. City of Ottawa, very short, very sweet, didn't have much to say. She was trying to imply that the cities, through this one recommendation, through this well-decorated OPP officer who put together a nice email, which kind of laid out a bunch of stuff. But one of the items she listed was an injunction could cause things to get worse. If you don't have to use it, basically don't use it. It's preferable to use negotiation. Almost implying, without quite saying it, that an injunction should be like a last resort if you're going to have any success, because what it does is it causes resentment and problems and resistance as well to the injunction. But the city was pointing to that strongly, and I can see why, because they're trying to say, hey, look, injunction wasn't a real option to us because the OPP themselves said this is something that's not always beneficial or helpful. What the OPP really said was the preference would be to negotiate. PLT teams can be successful with negotiation. And as one of the tools, injunctions is available. What the city was trying to do there, Alyssa Tompkin was trying to do there, was take it off the table. But we all know that everything that was available, legal options, laws that were available should have been used first. And that would have been a perfect one to use. All right, I have a commissioner in my ear. So here you go. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Well, there you go. There's another day in the bag. I'm just going to wait for the audio to quit. There we go. My audio's on. You can hear me. Looks good. Great, great. Well, we did it. Made it through another day. Actually had 3 witnesses today. Did 2 full witnesses and a half. So 2.5 witnesses today. It's a partial OPP sandwich with the OPS on either side. But yeah, there you go. It was a great day. So let me go. We had some good conversations in the chat. Denise, if you can get your brother-in-law or your brother and your sister-in-law, that'd be cool. We'll check that out. I've got a whole whack of notes, so this could be 15, 20 minutes or so. But, if you want to do it, check it out. I'm about to do it. Hello to Rumble, though. Holy moly. I don't know if YouTube's punishing me for that strike or what, but everybody's on Rumble today. So nice to see you all there. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to subscribe or Rumble or whatever it is you do over there. But I'd like to start doing some more chats there. So if that keeps growing like that and you start chatting in the windows there, I will come and join you. All right. So we had 3 witnesses and we still have some notes from the first one, which was an OPS inspector. There we go. Russell Lucas, Inspector of Special Events. We went through quite a bit of what was brought up by the council, or the committee council, and Rebecca Jones already from the lawyer for Peter Slowly. And I think we did the city as well. Yep, they were talking about. Oh no, we didn't. Top of page 3, last sentence stated that there would be trucks. Oh yeah, so impeached. This is the other impeachment that we're looking for. So it was the city of Ottawa who got the second impeachment. So the first one was the council itself, the committee council, who impeached him on whether or not there was room on Wellington. He said he didn't know, had no idea. It turns out he had notes, part of a meeting where he saw it from 4 different intersections. So City of Ottawa had another impeachment for him. Let me just quickly refresh my memory here. I'm like one of the witnesses, just reading my notes. The Quebec vehicles. Okay, it had hundreds of right. So they were trying to figure out whether or not how many vehicles there was, according to him, inspector. And there was conversation that it was thousands. He was expecting thousands. But yet on page 3, the last sentence, that if there would be more trucks, would have changed the plan. And he said yes. So he said at this point, if he knew there was going to be more trucks, he would have changed the plan. So he thought there was less trucks. However, your testimony was that you didn't know. So he was saying he didn't know. And then he took him to a page where exactly he says that. Yeah, he says, and then he testifies and he starts to stumble. He goes, the Quebec vehicles. So I guess they were expecting hundreds or thousands, but not thousands. Correct. Yeah, so he did admit after being across that there was more vehicles coming, and according to him, if he knew there was more vehicles coming, he would have changed the plan, but he didn't change the plan. And then under some good cross, it turns out he did know there was more vehicles coming, so he should have changed his plan. There was a lot more redacting. Yep, the OPS has a lot. So far, the OP did not. Only phone numbers. Yeah, so you have noticed, I think you've seen the pattern. Whenever the document starts with OPS, 5 zeros, 4 zeros, or whatever, it's usually going to have redacting in it. If it's OPP, usually not going to have redacting in it. And I have seen this pattern so far, and I think you're all recognizing it as well. Bylaw was feeling unsafe over minor action when referring to burn barrels. So addressing, they're just heaters. But addressing burn barrels, in his own words, was a minor action. And we keep hearing from many, many witnesses that the pig, the crane, and burn barrels and fuel were all the things that kept them awake at night. So the burn barrels being called a minor action for bylaw, not a big deal. There were no actual fires. Nobody got hurt. A lot of people were responsible. And one quote I did like from him that the city of Ottawa got out of him, and I don't think they meant to, but there it is. The PLT were negotiating since day one. Because when that came out, there was a bit of a stumble from the question asker, the council. She didn't like that answer because the city's position has always been very early that they didn't know what they were dealing with early on. They thought it was just a weekend thing. They were going to come and go with the placards and be gone. So for the city to admit that since day one, OPS was negotiating with them, that means maybe they weren't thinking it was just a quick little 2-day weekend thing. Why would you negotiate if you thought it was just a little pop in and say hi? No, the truth is OPS knew better, and they're trying to say different now. Of course, they knew since January that they were coming. It was going to be a big stay, and they also knew at this point that the federal government were going to be difficult. They were not going to sit and chat. So they had both sides. There was going to be no movement. It was going to take a long time. Christine Johnson, I think this is the first time we've seen her from the Ottawa Coalition of Residents and Business. She didn't have the sticker on her laptop, so somebody got the memo there, or she doesn't have one at all, but we didn't see our buddy with the sticker, so Mr. Tax-Rich. But Christine did attack well. Again, this group here from the Ottawa Coalition of Residents and Businesses, their primary goal is to make everybody look bad and to prove that all of the failures, no matter who did the failures, impacted the residents and businesses, because this will also lead to additional things like compensation, something. There'll be other things. There's a good reason why they're there and doing a good job attacking all witnesses. She was attacking that he knew it would be large and long, also leading to the potential for violence. Again, they're just loving those words. Good thing that this is during the day and there's no drinking game here, because unprecedented would be one, and for sure potential, that would be another drinking word, and diagonal, I'd make that a double drinking word because it's fun when it comes up. Then he said they were peaceful. Even though they were peaceful, there was some heightened concern. Oh, she said, sorry. Even though that they were peaceful, was there a heightened concern? And then re-emphasize heightened concerns. And the witness responded with, we were trying to find places. There were no plans to put them on Kent or block Kent. However, on Friday, that didn't happen. So they're worried about some blocking on Kent Street that didn't actually materialize. And then he made another comment. So again, with letting the witness speak. So one quote that came out of him that was, I think, very good for the convoy is, according to him, they started to carpool and there were a lot of wins. So when he's talking about the negotiations and working with the convoy group, he was referring to getting some wins. And one of the wins was they started to carpool. So great. It sounds to me like it's a group who's working with all the authorities they can and doing what they can to minimize the impact to the residents, but maximize the protest to the government. And then we had our favorite Government of Canada. We covered this in the other break because the Government of Canada really, really goes on to that disinformation tangent. Again, the Emergency Act doesn't have a clause that says if you don't know what you're doing or don't understand information, go ahead and pull the emergency and use this. Nothing like that. So I do think that what they're trying to get at is some sort of centralized information, central command, central intel, something along those lines. And if you remember, the U.S. kind of started to try and do that, where they were going to have a division of truth like thing. This might be Canada's version. We might be looking into that. Oh, I also got notice that Bill C-11 has passed a second reading. That's not good. It's also quietly happening while we're focusing on this. And maybe all that's related. Central Command with intelligence and C-11. And yeah, you'll be able to propagandize and control the narrative all over the place. Reach out to your senators if you can. I've reached out to some. I'm just a little guy out in Alberta, but I'm going to do whatever I can to get their attention. I've offered to speak to them. I've offered to let them explain it to us, why we should have it. I think if they sit down and listen, they should not vote it. But I'm open to having a senator if you have the time, if you think it's important that Canada understands your perspective on why you're moving ahead with that. I think it would be worthwhile to have. So that's an open offer. I've sent a tweet out. Best of luck. If you can take a second, hit my Twitter, retweet that one because we want to get their attention on that one. If anything, come and explain it to us so we can understand better, because what we understand and what we've read and what we've analyzed, it's dangerous to try and control any speech on any platform for any reason, whether Canada needs more attention or not. And I probably would be directly impacted by that. I would likely get a list of things I can't talk about. And then if I do talk about it, whether it's Rumble or YouTube, I could get into blockage and being taken down. So I would like to see us not ignore that one, even though the inquiry has taken all of our attention today. Bill C-11 passed the second reading in the Senate. This is not good news. Pass a note to your senator. Be cordial, be nice, don't be mean, and explain to them how all sources of information should stay open, and the government has no place in sorting, reviewing, or approving information that's coming off of media platforms from people like me and people like you. All right, so back to this. There was a lot of whining from the federal government about social media. So in the questions, fact or fiction, is there confusion on whether or not they were police supporting? Yeah, we went through some of that. But again, mountain of a molehill, whether or not a police officer was supporting the protesters or not by taking a selfie isn't proof of misinformation. All right. Yeah, we went through the convoy stuff. They did a great job. Bathsheba did a great job. National Police Federation. Yeah, it's interesting that the National Police Federation are involved. I'm not quite sure why. Like maybe they're trying to maintain their membership's appearance of professionalism in the wake of what they're also calling a disaster in command. So maybe it's in the National Police Federation's best interest to maintain the integrity and the image of their members in the face of this, because certainly OPS is not going to look good, and they certainly haven't. So maybe that's what they're around here for. But they were talking quite a bit about the fencing and the fact that PPS was using it to hide behind the construction fencing that we heard about earlier. So it was confirmed that PPS, which is the Parliamentary Protective Services, were using it as a barricade. No big deal. They don't have to hide from anybody. But yeah, they were there. And here comes, I think, the best quote that should go down in infamy for today because it's a horrible one. First, they were talking about had there been any activity on the Hill, PPS would have needed support, correct? Sure. Like your question is a hypothetical. If there was a spaceship that lands on Sussex Drive, are we going to fix the grass later? Sure. Like we can have these hypotheticals all day long. But then she followed it up with a qualifier and said, well, it was virtually certain, wasn't it? What does virtually certain on a hypothetical mean? Like we are now in 2 degrees of fantasy. We're so far from reality now. It's surprising. What was his answer? Sure. But I don't understand how that's evidence. I don't understand how it's testimony. That's way beyond hearsay, speculation level. Virtually certain. I don't even know if that's even an oxymoron or not. PPS had a ton of support, as we found out, and if needed, all police were available. He iterated through a list of different ones that were available: RCMP, OPS, OPP, York, Toronto. There's a lot of police officers that were involved during this that were available. Had there been a virtually certain event on the Hill, come on. And we were not sending officers on a routine basis because there was nothing going on. So she was asking, would you send officers if there was an incident? And he said, well, of course. Who would respond? Well, a whole whack of people. And did you send any of them there? He said, well, not on a routine basis because there's nothing going on. So some weird question out of the Police Foundation, but I guess they're trying to paint a picture of cooperation amongst everybody, and all of that was available at any time. Had there been an incident, there would have been great cooperation. Maybe they don't like the idea of central command, and they're trying to establish that there's no need for a central command. There already was working partnerships in place. Could be. I'd love to interview some of these people to see where they were going with their questions. It would be great to find out. And it looks like we closed with Jessica Borrow from the Ottawa Police Service. So their lawyer. This is going to be a little bit more favorable and a little bit more cover your butt type of conversation here. But they were cooperative from the beginning. She wanted to establish that everybody was cooperating in the police services. And if you wanted to try and stop, these quotes. If you wanted to try and stop them, what would that have looked like? Come on, city. Come on, OPS. Stop asking the hypothetical about breaking the law. So your hypothetical is a violation of the charter. Okay, your hypothetical is stopping the free movement of Canadians, the lawful movement. So that's a charter violation. And it's really bothering me a little bit how often these people are throwing up illegal activity amongst authorities and officials as if it's commonplace, and then expecting a logical, reasonable answer for that question. Come on. Like there is so much you couldn't get away with in the real world that they're just treating like commonplace. Remember, they had creative accounting. That was a term that nobody even objected to. Then she went, Jessica went on and said, where are you getting intel? Okay, asking where are you getting this information? Because it's clear that the OPS is going to play the we had bad information card. And So the answer was partners, and they would reach out to PLTs to get their information. He called it multidimensional, and referred to it multidimensional a few times. But in this particular answer of where do you get intel, what didn't come up was social media. So he didn't list social media on this answer at all. So he listed off partners and PLT, and it's all multidimensional, but he didn't answer social media. Although we know previously that he used social media quite a bit to get some information, like the fence and like the selfies of the police officers. They were cooperative, then they were not. Correct. Now talking about the PLTs, so the OPS, Jessica's trying to establish that at one point the OPP PLT was not cooperative, it looks like. No, sorry, my bad. It's not the OPP PLT. It's the protesters she's referring to. So at one point they were cooperative, and then they were not. Correct? And he says, yeah. And then they go into why. So they set up an arrest with the OPS and destroyed the relationship with OPS PLT. Okay, so what happened was, this is the Coventry incident. This is the moment that they keep pointing to when they say communication is completely broken down and there's no chance of recovering it, and then that's it. I'm pretty sure we're going to hear testimony next week from the convoy that says, nope, we are even willing to negotiate up to the moment of the inquiry starting. So I bet you that they were happy to negotiate at any point. So what it looks like was they're using this Coventry incident as the, I don't say Achilles heel, but as the straw that broke the camel's back, when the camel's back was nice and strong and nothing was wrong with it. Because what they did was, as we've heard many times, they coordinated with the convoy or participants to move the fuel out of the Coventry area. Where exactly they were going to go move it to, I'm pretty sure it was prearranged ahead of time as okay. And then they were going to go move it. As they left Coventry and on their way, they got arrested, picked up. That wasn't part of the deal. That wasn't part of the plan. And the OPP PLT didn't know about that part of it, and that wasn't what was negotiated between the OPP PLT. That's when the OPP PLT and the OPS PLT broke down, and that's when OPS PLT then reported back to OPS that PLT efforts have broken down with the convoy. As we've heard from the OPP, they stood there in surprise and awe that first that they broke the deal. They went and arrested the participants who were moving the fuel as agreed. Then they were also very concerned that the trust was broken. And then last, I guess, they were really concerned why OPS PLT team vacated and just called it quits. So when you listen to the OPP PLT, they were willing to keep going. And that is our next witness. So it was the OPS PLT representative. So let me just go down to my notes. Inspector Marcel Baudin, French. Excellent witness. So I'm just going to preface this one with he did a great job. He went down the middle, but he also said things that, of course, I don't necessarily agree with. For example, multiple times he did refer to it as not peaceful, and it was violating the law, and it was an issue. I don't agree with his assessment to that point, but even with that, I think he was an excellent witness because he was very to the point. He was not somebody that could be pushed over. He didn't fill in blanks. If he didn't understand the question, he asked you. And he always kept eye contact with the person he was speaking to because he was genuinely interested in understanding what they're talking about. Wonderful characteristics for a PLT member, a liaison, because I trusted him just from his behavior and mannerisms on the stand, and I really enjoyed listening to him. It was a nice break after the first witness because even the questions that were being asked were bothering me a bit. But I think the first one with the inspector, so the first committee council, I actually have no notes. So normally what I do with this is as I'm listening to it, if I have an objection or a problem with something, I will write it down. Or if I have something that's a real big highlight that really worked out well for one side or the other, I'll write it down. But because his testimony was just so matter of fact, so to the point, and so easy to follow, I really didn't have any objections during the the committee council's questions. And by the way, they're doing a great job. The committee council, I think, is right down the middle. It's doing a great job too. But that can't be said about Tom Curry, the lawyer for Peter Slowly. When he took the stand, I've got some notes here. He really tried to control the witness. He tried to put words in his mouth. That didn't work at all. I could see that Tom Curry was very, I don't want to say the word frustrated, but he realized very quickly this is not a malleable witness, somebody you can massage and do things with. This was a very firm, a very fair, and you had to be very careful on what your questions were, because you're going to get the answers that, whether you like them or not, you're going to get the answers. So we saw a lot of him focusing that the event was different. He was trying to get a positive replies out of him, and to make the event unprecedented. Yeah, he kept trying to get the word unprecedented in there. So that would be another drink word, because we get that one all the time. It kind of sort of didn't work. Like, he was doing these general, would you agree that things were just larger? This was like the biggest event we've ever seen. And of course he does, because we just heard that in a previous testimony that he felt that way. It was a big event. It was the largest in Canadian history. We all get it. But it was also nonviolent. He had a lot of okay answers. So okay is not confirmation, and it's not denial. It's right in the middle. It's like, all right, don't know what you say. It's fine. It's like a non-objectionable way of responding, but it's not a confirmation. It's not a positive response either. Because he kept trying to put words in his mouth. And then one answer, I love this. This witness was very good at finishing his answer, even though the representative or lawyer had received the answer they want. Normally what you're trying to do as a lawyer is you're trying to get the answer that you want out and then stop the witness from talking, especially if you don't know what they're going to say. Sometimes it's to your benefit to let them talk, but on a cross like this, he was very controlled on purpose, because he needed to get at least some positive responses out of him that would help Peter Slowly. But one that came out was, to be fair, we look at everything in addition to scale and scope. We look at dynamics. So this was in response to Tom's insistence that the scale of it was something that just became unmanageable. But the response that we got out of this witness was, scale is one of the elements that matters, sure, but not the only one. They look at all dynamics. So can we negotiate? Are they violent? What's the likelihood that they're going to get reinforcements? What's the likelihood that they're going to do some sort of charge? There's a lot to it. It's a lot more than just scope. So, and that's all that that Tom has at that point, was it got large. That's it. Dead air after that. It got large. There were no other elements in the dynamics that made it into unprecedented. We had to deal with it. It was horrible. It just got large. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Canada was upset. There was typically division in protest groups, so that came up again. So under Tom Curry, one of the responses, because Tom kept trying to emphasize that this group had a master control, and at any point, as if the deal was made, everybody would go home. No, not true. Not even true. You don't even have that kind of consensus in the OPS. All right, guys, you have a split OPS, you have a split council, you have a split city, you have no consensus even amongst your own organization, but yet you're trying to demand it out of a grassroots command structure organization. Rules for thee, but not for me, right? Yes, and there was a lot of comments in the chat that he stands up for protesters, and one of the comments I think I did squeeze into my last break was he has to. He has to. Well, that's first is his character. This is clearly a man with honor. He's not afraid to tell it like it is. And this is exactly the kind of person you want out there negotiating and liaisoning with any events. This one was all done, but there'll be another one. I think we heard testimony that 200 protests in Ontario is a typical year. Recently, they've been growing quite a bit, which we will call abnormal because of COVID and other things that were definitely worth protesting. But a typical year is 200. So that's a protest every 2 days. So look, Ontario Provincial Police, they had lots of experience, and there's no doubt in my mind that he put his integrity and his career way above anybody else's, because that's what he makes his living on, and that's just the kind of guy he is. Government of Canada, yeah, I covered them last time. Nothing but leading. So now we'll jump down to, I think, Ottawa Coalition of Residents and Businesses. Yeah. Look, you go to law school for a long time, right? 4 years or so. I did paralegal, which was a 2-year course that we finished in a year. So it was got like half of the program. We didn't get into like the serious criminal stuff or family law or estate law, stuff like, yeah, that's about it. Everything else we got into. So look, I really expect you to know your stuff. It's not easy. But how do you come out with a sentence like this? There's literal fuel in a literal fire when referring to moving the fuel from Coventry to possibly downtown. Okay, the first half of your sentence, literal fuel, yep, you're correct. It's actual literal fuel. And if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe and press that notification button to receive more information like this. You can also follow me at yellowhead.vote to stay informed and get the inside scoop. Thank you.